The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is currently being sued by more than 25,000 victims of terror attacks, including 9/11, over their role in funding these events. As these lawsuits progress, we're learning even more about the disgusting actions of the Saudi government. I have Farron Cousin from Trial Lawyer Magazine to talk about this. Farron, again, we've done this story more times than I can count. I wish somebody would listen. I wish other outlets, hopefully mainstream media, or what they call corporate media. This is very mainstream, but we're not corporate. Why won't corporate media talk about the elephant in the room? And that is the Saudi prince and the Saudi family. They're not our friends. Give me your take on it. Again, we talked about it last week, but there's a lot more to this story.
Well, I think part of the reason it doesn't get the coverage that it should is because, as we've also discussed, you've got people like Boeing and all these other massive defense contractors that are huge advertisers on corporate media, and they make billions of dollars per year from Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is the biggest purchaser of weapons from the United States. So if the corporate media were to start covering these issues, it could hurt their advertisers. So it's just like the typical thing. Their advertisers need the money from these people, so they're not going to talk about all the horrible things that have been happening. And as you just said, the last couple months, we have seen huge developments in several different lawsuits against Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabian banks for funding terrorism.
Okay, I love this one. Okay, first of all, the trial judge in this case was a goof. The trial judge, we had a case against Saudi Arabia where they showed overwhelming information that the royal family and people in government were directly involved in planning the 9/11 attack and actually giving money and giving a place to live for the people that were involved. So the lawyers involved in the 9/11 discussion, in the litigation, they bring the lawsuit, they say, we got enough to show you. Here's where it gets crazy. The judge at the trial level says, oh no, you didn't really show that there was a clear intent. You didn't show that the money that was used from a Saudi Arabian bank owned by the royal family, that bank intended for the money to be used for 9/11. Actually, there was a lot to show that it intended, but they didn't even have to go there. You see, this is what bothers me about this case. All they had to say was that the bank was reckless, that they knew, should have known, and ignored the fact that the money was going to be used for 9/11. That's what happened. Second Circuit in New York is a nightmare. The judges up there most of them come from Wall Street. They come from Wall Street establishment organizations. They sit on they sit on the bench up there, and they make these rulings all the time. Thank goodness the Second Circuit said, you know what? I think there is enough intent. Take it from there.
Well, and the lawyers in the case specifically said, listen, we have laid it out. We have mapped it out. We have traced this money from the terrorist attack back to the Saudi royal family. We have made those connections. We have connected the banks. We have tied the exact money into these attacks. These were brilliant lawyers in this case, and they absolutely did the due diligence. They connected every possible dot, and they said there is no doubt in our minds, based on the evidence we have, that this was funded by both Saudi banks and the Saudi royal family.
Okay, let's take it a step further. I could go on. There are so many lines connecting these dots to the Saudi royal family. First of all, we know, it's very clear, where the money went from the Saudi royal family and the Saudi royal family friends they're all part of the Saudi Arabian society. They're the upper elite. We know we could follow the money to the charities that they donated to, and so they try to cover it by saying, well, we just gave money to the charities. They know for a fact that these are charities that were simply a front for terrorist money. So when I hear a judge make an absurd ruling at the trial level like this, I'm almost used to it coming out of New York, the Eastern District and the Southern District of New York. But this, to me, was particularly ugly because they had all the information they needed.
Well, and right now we also have other evidence out there as part of these lawsuits that, again, been going on for 18 years, and only in the last few months we've seen these, really big developments as things start to come out. They have traced this money from the Saudi royal family to the Taliban. They've traced it to Al-Qaeda. They have traced it to ISIS. every major terrorist group on this planet, they're finding out that, oh my God, Saudi Arabia, we're able to trace money from them back to these groups, back and forth all the time.
It's worse than that. It's worse than that. We know now through freedom of information. Yeah, I understand we're handling these cases too. We're handling these cases of banks washing money for terrorism in Iran and Afghanistan. I mean, the trail in those cases it's crystal clear. They even came up with a law called JASTA, you recall, which says we need to make sure where we have a terrorist organization associated with a country that we treat that country in a certain way that's different from other countries. It raises our ability to go after Iraq or Iran or wherever the terrorist organization may be. But they haven't included Saudi Arabia here, and we know that 15 out of the 19 people that murdered 3,000 Americans were all Saudi, and we know this now, don't we? We now know that they've actually traced the money in the whole distribution process to a Saudi official who is connected to the royal family.
Right. And part of the reason why we're not willing as a country to go ahead and list Saudi Arabia as a state sponsor of terrorism, which they very clearly are based on the evidence, is again because they purchase more weapons from the United States than anyone else on this planet. That we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're not about to give up that money. That is money that feeds our military industrial complex. They have tons of oil. We want to be friends with oil countries or take them over like they're trying to do with Venezuela. So they're not going to do it. They're not going to touch Saudi Arabia. And we've seen it happen through Republican and Democrat administrations. No difference in policy towards this country, even though we found out in the leaked Podesta emails, they're sitting there talking about how horrible this is, and they knew and they were funding it
and didn't do anything. I understand. Now let's round up on that again. Let's round up on that again. Before we go pointing fingers at one administration and ignoring the others, Podesta had all of this information that came from Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That is where the information came
from. Those emails are available.
We know the emails are available. You can go online and see them. But we know that Hillary Clinton said, hey, we think they're part of a terrorist organization. We did nothing.
Right.
The media did nothing because of what you say. The arms industry is making so much money selling weapons to the damn Saudis, and then the Saudis take that money, they take the weapons, and they give it to ISIS, and they give it to terrorist organizations. We know that. We have that information. But nevertheless, we have these presidents walking around hand in hand with these thugs, these royal family thugs that would blow us off the face of the map if they could. And if we don't handle this as a realism, we're getting deeper and deeper into this problem.
Well, the thing is, that's why these lawsuits, I mean, honest to God, these trial lawyers out here, that's the last line. That's it. That's all we have left because the government won't do anything. Bernie Sanders is actually the only person I have heard so far say, we've got to rethink this relationship because these people are clearly not our friends. We have seen the human rights abuses that they do to their own people. We see what they're doing in Yemen. We see what they're doing all over the globe. This isn't right.
Aren't you disappointed we're not hearing that from Joe Biden or Warren?
I'm not surprised.
Because Biden is part of that whole gaggle that have ignored it for the last, God knows how many years, 8 years at least. Amazon's trying to claim that they were denied a multi-billion-dollar Pentagon contract because President Trump has a grudge against the company. Okay, this story is this is out in the Lunosphere. Let's start from the beginning. All right, we know that the first contract that the Amazon got, that Bezos got, that it was a scam. Right? We know it was $600 million contract. We know that some of the players in the securing that government contract, they did the same thing with this government contract where they were looking for $10 billion, right? They had an inside person, Amazon had an inside person working to try to shove this contract down the president's throat, down Washington's throat. And we find out you have a bunch of people that are on the inside operating directly for Bezos, and Bezos says, oh, I'm really disappointed I didn't get the contract. Really?
Well, he's suing now because he didn't get the contract. But that information you're talking about, that chain of people from Amazon into the Pentagon, That's all from Mother Jones. This
Yeah.
is not
No, this isn't
crazy.
us.
but they pointed out that there were two people working in the Pentagon who used to be connected with Amazon, and what they were doing was they consistently and repeatedly changed the criteria for what you needed to meet in order to qualify to be considered for the contract. And then they were accused of actually sending information to Amazon about competitors' bids and offers so that Amazon could counter the whole thing reeks.
But isn't this the crazy part? The White House can decide whatever they want.
Right.
The White House doesn't have to give any reason for saying, you know what, little Bezos, you're not getting this contract because we found out that you were involved in all kinds of scams and skullduggery trying to get the contract. And yes, Trump does hate Bezos. And yes, Bezos does hate Trump. That doesn't change the atmosphere at all. The president has an absolute right to do that. And for Bezos to bring this lawsuit, let me tell you what I love about it. Here's what I love about it. The lawyers representing the White House in this case have a free road. They can dig into as much Bezos stuff as they want. That's where we're going to find the rubber meets the road in this case. If you think that Bezos is some kind of national hero, and my God, he ought to get the $10 billion contract because he's Jeff Bezos, you don't know the history of Bezos, do you?
No, and to be honest, I don't know that I've ever agreed with Donald Trump on anything. Yeah. But even if he had said, listen, I'm not giving you this contract because I don't like the color shirt you're wearing, I still would have said, you know what, I like that decision because Bezos cannot be trusted with these contracts. He's been horrible with cybersecurity, horrible with selling our data.
How many millions, look, they were hacked, right? How many millions of pieces of information did they get that they simply lost?
Right.
I mean, it was millions. It was in the millions of people involved with some aspect of Amazon that they got their social security number, they got their date of birth, they got all this inside information. And now Bezos says, oh, well, we got that straightened out. Now we want you to give us the most vast security contract in the world.
Yeah, for the U.S.'s secrets. Trust us with that. And meanwhile, look, Amazon should be broken up because they are too many things. They're online retailer, they're Whole Foods, they're government contractor. And so for the government to then say, you know what, instead we're going to give it to Microsoft, the people who just do computing, that actually does make more sense in that case instead of the people who sell knickknacks online.
The question is, who do you dislike most, Bezos or Trump? It's almost a toss-up, Thanks for joining me, okay, Farron?
Thank you.
Every year, 1 million hernia surgeries are performed in the United States. Unfortunately, some mesh implants that are used in these surgeries have caused complications, including infection and organ damage that led to surgeries to correct those problems. If this has happened to you, learn more about the hernia mesh lawsuit by going online to hernia.law or call us for a free consultation about your legal rights.